And what I've always said in this business is that sales are a lagging indicator of performance. So what happens is that you don't have that like instant feedback mechanism to tell you whether what you're doing is right or wrong. And because of that, you can get fooled into complacency to think, okay, well, I stepped off the gas a little bit and nothing bad happened. So I could, and then 6 months later, you see the ramifications of that. And then it's going to take another 6 months to get it back of hard work and consistency. So just having that conviction in doing the right thing day after day is really important in this business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's interesting because you're dead on with, the sales being the lagging indicator. I've seen that in my own business. I would say for myself personally, that consistency day after day after day and just being on top of things, that's the hardest part for me. And it's not the part of the business that I love actually, but it's super crucial. But I'm curious, if sales is the lagging indicator, I mean, do you have anything that you're looking at as like a leading indicator?
So listen, it's been an interesting journey, especially with Mr. Jeff, because now we're getting more insight into our customer base and metrics and in real-time data. We didn't have those tools. So really it's old school, and it's in your stores, talking to your customer base, talking to your employees, watching the business. It's a presence that you have to have. There's certainly metrics that you can look at, but like I said, it was more. I've always been shocked by the amount of people in this business that have a disdain for their customer base, and it's always been a puzzle and an enigma to me. And so for me, when I was running the operations, or when I ran my own stores, it was talking to your customers. They'll tell you. I mean, there's no secrets. They'll tell you exactly what's going on, how they feel, what you could do better, and you got to listen. You got to listen to the feedback. That's your bread and butter. They're the ones putting food on your table. Listen to them, and the more you open up that dialogue and establish that trust with your customer base, the more you inform them, and the better pulse you'll have.
Yeah. So were you back then, were you doing that as you were scaling up? I mean, I imagine that gets more and more difficult to do at specific locations, at least as you start to scale up. Are you training employees to do that? Or are you getting snapshots at different places and kind of trying to apply the lessons kind of across the board? How are you handling that?
Yeah. So, so if you're asking about like in my own stores, which, was very small, I was able to do it and execute on a personal basis. And I was able to instill that and model that behavior for my managers and then for my staff. And you created a culture around that just became prevalent and persistent. And if you were continuing to lead that, then others followed, and that was effective. I did find, like in a chain, as large as Clean Right, that it does become harder and harder to do that on a personal level, and then building that culture around that becomes harder, especially when your turnover is high and you're working with a employee base that's constantly changing. So that's quite frankly been a challenge in the business for scale and growth. And the good owner operators that are hands-on really have an advantage in there. So, and I think the way that the business is changing, it's even more and more important, because when we first when we were first going at Laundry Capital, it was mostly self-service. So the customers did their own work. You're more focused on keeping your equipment running and your stores clean. And listen, having somebody friendly with a smile that was important, but it wasn't the make or the break of the business, because there are a lot of stores across the country that operate unattended. So that really wasn't. But now you're seeing a big shift towards service. So more of this hospitality nature is more and more important. And that's a culture change in the industry, that it's a dramatic shift. And I'm not sure everyone's quite figured that out yet, and how to execute that in the best way.